Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast. Each week, we bring you the very best self-publishing tips, tools, and resources for authors. I'm Shah Barrett.
I'm Wendy Valla.
And I'm Trudy J. And welcome to another episode.
Welcome.
Woo! I'm back off holiday.
Yay. But we don't have Cheryl this week.
No.
So we get one back and we lose one.
Yeah. The way it goes. But this week we have a super exciting guest.
Amazing
Oh my
guest.
goy, guys, you're going to be really excited. It is Ana Huang. Did I say that
Yeah.
kind of okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
So Ana, if you don't know her, is awesome.
Yeah.
We're just going to read out her bio.
Yeah.
And then we'll get started on the interview.
Ana is a New York Times, USA Today, International, and #1 Amazon best-selling author, best known for her Twisted series, which has over 500 million views under the TikTok hashtag Twisted series. She writes new adult and contemporary romance with deliciously alpha heroes, strong heroines, and plenty of steam, angst, and swoon sprinkled in. Her books have been sold to over 24 foreign publishers for translation and featured in outlets such as NPR, Cosmopolitan, Financial Times, and The Today Show. A self-professed travel enthusiast, she loves incorporating beautiful destinations into her stories and will never say no to a good chai latte. Welcome, Ana.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome.
We're
awesome.
excited to have you.
Yeah. So let's get started right at the beginning, Ana. Can you just tell us how you got into writing and specifically self-publishing? Like, where did it all begin? How did you get there?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I started writing to kind of improve my English. I took English as a second language classes when I was a kid, and my mom, to kind of speed things along, she was like, why don't you write me a short story every day in English? And I didn't know I was taking English as a second language classes back then because I was the only student in my class. And so I was like, wow, my mom really loves to read my stories. And so I honestly, that was just how I started. It was always kind of like a creative outlet for me. And I never really thought about doing it as a career past. There was like one point in elementary school where I went to my mom and I was like, I think I want to be an author. And she was like, she's like, this is great as a hobby, but you should probably go into something more financially stable, right? And so, it was just something I always did as a hobby on the side. And so I didn't write my first full-length novel, I think, until I was 16 or 17. And it just kind of stayed in my drafts for a while. I think I posted it on this like online site for a little bit, but then I actually went to grad school in my mid-20s, and I was like, wow, I really need to find a way to get passive income while I'm in grad school. So I had this story that I already written. I ended up self-publishing it, which I had since unpublished because it's young adult and I no longer write YA. So I never thought much of it. I was like, this would be just kind of a great side income. And it wasn't really until 2020 that I really started looking at writing as a viable career, mainly because I was a little tired of the job that I had chosen at that time, like my day job. I needed something more creative. The lockdown, the pandemic really, it really kind of changed things and made me think about where I was in life. And so I really got back into reading and writing. And I published my first adult romance in 2020. I published Twisted Love in April 2021. And the rest is history.
Wow.
It's a very condensed version of what happened.
I bet it is. And go your mum for making you write those stories.
Yeah, amazing. She was like, you are going to learn English fast.
That is such a cool way to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And what did you study before that? Did I have it right that you're in marketing or?
No, so I studied international relations. And so I worked at this sort of consulting firm, but then I gradually transitioned into doing like the press relations and the marketing. So that was what I did. Very different.
Yeah. Oh well, you chose the right place.
Yeah.
So was Twisted Love was the second book you published, if we're not counting the one that you wrote when you were 16?
Yeah, so it was the beginning of my second series. So I had a series before Twisted. It was called the If Love series, and I published all 4 of those books in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And then I wrote Twisted Love at the end of 2020 and published it in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
a lot of
Tight
people don't
over
even
here.
know. Yeah, it's so funny because 2020, oh man, I wish I could go back and like have whatever magic I had that year, because it takes me so much longer to write now.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I have asked myself many times the same question. I think several things, right? Well, first, my first series, the books were shorter. Also, they didn't have that sort of suspense element that takes me longer to write. And I actually, I think it does take me a little bit longer now, because there's a little bit more, I would say, like pressure, like more expectations. There's more stuff to do, right? Because back then, like, no one knew who I was. I was just kind of like writing, doing my own thing. I didn't have emails to answer, did not have a social media following. And now it's just like every day I try to write, but it's, there's like a lot going on.
Absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So you wrote Twisted Love. So the 4 books in 2020, Twisted Love came out. So when you wrote Twisted Love, were you thinking this is going to be the one, or do you just write, okay, this is my next series? Like, what was the thinking and how did you approach it?
Yeah. So I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, like this is going to be like my career maker, right? But I had gone into it with a little bit more knowledge of the market and self-publishing and marketing than I had when I wrote the first series. Because I'll be totally honest, I did not even know Kindle Unlimited existed until like mid 2020 when I published the If Love series, because I hadn't really read for leisure before that, and so I didn't know the KU market. I didn't really know what readers wanted. Before that, I had only read traditionally published romance. And so my If Love series, I actually had one of my proofreaders. She was like, your books read like trad pub. They were like in third person. They were not like super tropey. And so I think my reading taste also changed over that year. So when I went into Twisted Love, I actually just wrote a book that I wanted to read. And it was a little over the top, right? Which I'm kind of glad I wrote that before anyone knew what it was, because I didn't have that voice in the back of my head being like, oh, like you have to do this, or you have to follow, this certain structure or whatever. Like I just wrote it the way I wanted to write it, and that was it. And I did take a lot of the lessons I learned. Like I listened to a lot of podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie. Like I was in all of the Facebook groups for the self-published authors. So I just took what I learned and kind of threw it all into that release.
So can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that you did to do that? Like things
for the release of
for the release.
What was your build up and
oh God.
Because I know it was like full on.
It's it's a lot of things, right? So I had the basic things down, like I had the cover, which actually I'll get into the story about the cover later.
That's
the cover really gave me gray hairs towards the release month. But one thing I did do was I actually wrote the blurb for Twisted Love first, because I found that with the If Love series, it was hard for me to write a blurb after the fact, because I would just write the story as it is, right? And then I would try to shoehorn an interesting sounding blurb for the story. But I couldn't think of a way to do that without changing part of the actual story. Which when I look back, I'm like, okay, well, that was the craft issue. But so for Twisted Love, I wrote what I thought was a really compelling blurb for my genre first. And then I kind of shaped the story around that, because it really helped me hone in on the beats that I needed to hit that would resonate with readers, right? And then the usual, I got the professional editing done. I got more layers in the process. I got a book cover, like at that time. And it's very interesting because at that time, right, the genre convention is you pick a book cover that fits with the other books in your subgenre, right? So for me,
that's what we
new
all
adult,
say. Yeah.
yeah, that's what we all say. And for the most part, it is still true. We'll get into TikTok later, but we, yeah. So I was really excited, right? Like I bought this exclusive photo. It was like the black and white photo with the colored text, which was like what all the big new adult authors were doing, right? So I was super excited. And then that was also the time that Book Talk was starting. Like I started getting on Book Talk, right? I started getting on TikTok at the end of 2020. And this was still before romance Book Talk was as huge as it was now. Like it was still a lot of fantasy back then, like a lot of Sarah J. Maas and like Jennifer Lynn Armentrout, like those were the big ones. And you could kind of see romance making headway, but not as much as it is now. So I started, marketing on TikTok because that was the place that I got the most organic reach. Like I had a really small newsletter back then. I think I had like 200 or 300 subscribers when Twisted Love released.
Yeah.
I had a very small social media following on Instagram. So TikTok was where I could like really reach a bigger audience. And I got lucky in the sense that the day after I put up my pre-order for Twisted Love, I made a video on TikTok about it, and it went like semi-viral. I think it got maybe like 50,000 views, which for me at the time was like huge.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
And I got like I got over like 100 pre-orders overnight, like just from that video. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So it was wild. I was like, oh my God. I was like, so this is obviously where I want to be, right? Because obviously it drives sales. And so I really leaned into the TikTok marketing. I had built a good community there. And I just reached out to like a ton of influencers, like on every platform, right? Like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Like my goal at that time was, like, I don't care. Like I will give a free book out to anyone that wants it. I don't expect all of them to review it, but the more I give out, the bigger the chances that it will, that it'll reach more people, right? And so I leaned into that. And then when it came to the cover, I started getting really nervous about a month before release, because at that time, the book talkers, they all started saying, they're like, wow, I hate real people on covers. Like I would never buy a book with real people on covers, right? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I have a real person on my cover. And this was before the cover reveal. And I wouldn't have been as nervous about it if all of my pre-orders hadn't come from TikTok, right? Like if my pre-orders had come from like the normal romance readers from like Facebook or others who were used to that type of cover, I would not have been as nervous. But I was like, wow, I was like, what if I reveal message? I was like, what if I reveal this cover and everyone cancels their pre-order? They don't want the real person on the cover. And so I really scrambled. So at that time, I was like, you know what? I was like, let me just try this experiment. So I hired a designer at the last minute. This was like a week or two before the cover reveal, like a month before release. And I just kind of like went for it. I was like, you know what? I will create an alternate cover, like an object cover that will be paperback only. And because most book talkers are paperback readers anyways, I was like, so whoever wants the male model cover, they can have the model cover. Whoever wants the alt cover, they can have that version.
That is so clever.
And I was like, I don't know how it's gonna go, but we're gonna see. And it worked out really well.
Wow.
So, and I think I was lucky enough that I had sent out so many arcs. And I was lucky enough that a lot of them said yes, and they were posting about it, and Book Talk, like the romance community, was starting to gain a little traction at that time. So I think all of that combined, they started to really take off.
Combined with the fact that it's a really good book, Anna. I just want to mention that.
Really good book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like none of this would have worked if it was a crappy book. This is an awesome book. Plus,
thank you. I was like, and then like the small part about like the book. So it all kind of combined together, but it's interesting because even though it really took off, like it was the biggest release of my career at that time, right? But the series did not really take off until the third book came out in 2022 for several reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like it did well. Like it did really well in 2021, but like 2022 was the year that it like really got big.
Book 3 made it really bump.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I've heard book 3 quite often does that actually. from other
Yeah,
authors?
it's interesting. It's interesting because even now in my new series, I mean, books 1 and 2 did really well, but I can always see the excitement is always most palpable once you start getting to book 3 and beyond.
Yeah.
So it's like the magic number.
Yeah. It's weird,
Is
isn't it?
Just in terms of your books, is it a different couple for each book, or is it a
Yes.
continuing story?
Yeah.
So it's a different couple, but they are connected in some way.
Connected, interconnected standalones. Twisted and Kings of Sin. I made the mistake in my first series that the first 2 books were a duet, and then the second 2 books were standalones. And it's just it's a much harder sell for a duet unless you're established.
Yeah. Oops,
Oh,
So
lost Shah.
Oh,
Now she's back. She's back. Start again. Don't touch anything.
Wires. I'm touching nothing. Question: at this point, when you are doing your book talk reach out at that point, so that would have been in the beginning of 21, end of 2020.
Yeah.
So were you working full time then, and like in your day job? How did you manage everything?
Yeah, I was working full time. I didn't go full time until last May.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was full time I had a day job for a while. I don't know if you know the Clifton Strengths and Becca Syme.
Yeah.
I am a number 2 achiever.
So okay. What's number 1?
Here we go.
Number 1. No, I'm actually number 1 intellection.
Yay!
So it takes number 1 intellection. Let's go.
I'm missing the achiever part. I just spend all my time walling around and thinking. So go you.
The two really conflict because like intellection is like, no, you need to think more. My achiever is like, no, you need to like act right now. So I'm always fighting with myself. But yeah, I'm a number 2 achiever. So I don't mind. Like I will just sit there and I just work for fun, right? Like people are like, oh, what do you do for fun? I'm like, oh, like I just work. I just work. I don't really take time off. But yeah, I just sat there. I think I spent an entire week just like any time that I wasn't at my day job, I just spent an entire week compiling like a list of everyone that I wanted to reach out to. Wow. And I mean like I get very deep. So it was like a spreadsheet and it was I love spreadsheets.
I was going to say, I've heard you are a spreadsheet queen. Yeah.
I am. It had like a different column for each platform, right? So I had like a tab for the book talkers. I had a tab for like the bookstagrammers and the bloggers. And then I had like all of their handles, their following, their email address, and then like whatever their requirements are, So yeah. I spent a lot of time.
And you contacted them individually, like you didn't just send a mass email out.
Most of them are personalized. I have like a general structure for my email, right? With like the blurb and like the page count and the cover attachment and stuff. And then some of them, depending on what they put like in their blog, or what they put as in like, oh, I want to know like this certain thing about your book. If you reach out about an arc, like those I will customize a little bit. I'll also customize if I do know them a little bit better. And I'm like, here's why I think you like this book. So there were variations of the template, but for the most part, there was like a general information and then like a little bit of personalization.
It must have been a massive research job to find what people you thought were going to relate to this your genre and your book.
It took a long time, but is it weird that I enjoyed it? I love researching.
Not weird at all.
This is great. I was like, it took a long time and but it worked out in the end.
Yeah.
And do you still email to every, like, do you still do that list every launch or?
No, I don't. So now I have my permanent art team, and then I have I've let the PR sign up. I have a PR company that does that. So yeah, I'm trying to streamline. Like I coach with Becca Syme, so she's always like, you need to take more things off of your plate. So yeah.
I should imagine you're a very busy person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So with what is that the main stuff you did for Twisted Love? Like so then it just took off mainly.
Yeah. So it was the ARC readers. I did this sort of like kind of PR box thing I sold 50 PR boxes. It was just like, it had like the book, it had a little candle, and I just sold 50 of them from my Etsy store. I was really terrified because I'm like, oh my God, I'm spending so much money on this.
Yeah.
Like, is it even gonna make back my money? Like, luckily I sold out of the 50 because that was after all of the reviews had already started coming out and the word of mouth was already starting to grow. But yeah, I think that's honestly mostly it, because for me, honestly, here's the thing, like when you have a new release, whatever kind of marketing that you think, word of mouth will always be the number one most effective, like most important marketing for me, right? So sometimes I will talk to authors and they're like, you know, like I don't want to give out too many arcs because, you know, like if I give out the arcs, why would they buy it? Like, am I going to recoup the cost? I give out so many arcs and only a small fraction review, right? For me, I don't really mind, like if I was a new author, right? Because I'm like, every single book that you give out is an opportunity to reach a new reader. They may read it, they may not, but the more that you give out, the higher the chances are of you gaining a reader, right? And I'm like, it's a free digital arc. Like, I'm not losing any money by sending it to them. And yeah, like it just, like, I don't think about like in terms of ROI. I'm just like, okay, what is a way for me to get my book in front of as many people as possible?
That's a brilliant way of looking at it too.
So I have a question, Anna. Did you go Amazon exclusive or were you wide from the start? What was your publishing strategy?
I was in KU from the start. One, because it was really daunting looking at all of the wide retailers, and I'm like, oh my God. And then two, I thought, you know, all of the things they were like, you know, KU is the best place for a reader to, or for an author to grow a following. And I know like different people have different ideas about that, right? But for me, I'm like, this just seems like a better way because there's less of a barrier to entry. And then also the books that I write, I think they are more suited for a KU audience than a wide audience. So
that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So what are you, so now what do you do for your new releases? Is it very different? Is it now that you're a superstar?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm a superstar. So now it's a little bit different. So I still do my social media, right? Like Instagram and TikTok are my two main social medias. I have my Facebook group. Honestly, my most important marketing asset now is like my newsletter, which you have probably heard. I have quite a big list. And so that is, I try to use that strategically, right? I also segment my newsletter when I send things out because I'm hybrid now. So I have a traditional publisher in the UK and Commonwealth, and then I have one in North America. So sometimes the links are different, info are different. So I segment out my newsletters and I send them to the people they're most relevant to, but I always see a very nice bump when I send them out, right? So I usually, so my strategy is actually a little bit different now that I'm hybrid. When I was fully indie, I tended to condense all of the marketing into, I would say, like 6 to 8 weeks before release. Right? So like the cover reveal, the teasers, all of that, because I wanted all of that momentum to be put together so that it builds a little bit more buzz. So now my next release is actually my first hybrid release, which means that the traditionally published paperback and the ebook go live at the same time. So for that, it's a little bit different because we're really pushing pre-orders for print. So I had my cover reveal in like mid-June, which is way early because the book doesn't come out until October. So I really push the pre-orders a little bit more now. But yeah, I will start making TikToks about the book, like a little bit, sprinkle it here and there, right? Behind the scenes, like I talk about the characters, and then I really start to ramp up with the teasers about a month before release. I have my normal teasers. Sometimes I will do, to drive newsletter signups too, sometimes I will do an exclusive teaser that I will send out to my newsletter first. And only to my newsletter, that I don't post to social media, like probably 2 or 3 months before release. And then they'll post about it, right? And then it creates this sense of people like, oh my God, like I want to read this teaser and all of that. And then so I will usually send it out again. I'm like, okay, if you subscribe to my newsletter in this week, I'll send the teaser out again to new subscribers next week, which Yeah,
That's so
which
cool.
was really it works really well for getting newsletter signups.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I will do, you know, I'll do playlist reviews. I have a playlist for all of my books, Pinterest boards. Sometimes I'll do fan art, and then I'll get like a so, you know, I really write down to the deadline. But it's a lot easier to market the book when you have a physical version of the paperback, right? But because the book isn't finished, I will just print the cover on like an old book.
Yeah,
like
I do that. It's
yeah,
great.
so I have it, and it's great because I'm like, I have this that I can use in all of my videos. So yeah, it's just a lot of things. I'm always kind of experimenting and trying new things and seeing what works.
How long is your pre-order usually?
Long. I always have, like, by the time a book releases, I will already have the next book up for pre-order because that link automatically goes to my back matter.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I just wanted to go back just a little bit. So after Twisted Love came out, I'm assuming that your newsletter list got a bump up then and increased subscribers.
Yeah.
Did you do anything else at that time to increase your newsletter growth? Because I know that there was a lot of listeners and they're on that what you mentioned before, you know, a few hundred, and it's like, how do I get more? So what did you do at that point to grow?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. The only thing I did was I write a bonus scene for every book, and I put the sign up at the end of the book, right?
Yeah.
So that is, and it has grown my list like substantially.
Yeah.
And when I look at it, it's funny because I was just looking at my numbers the other day, and 85% of my newsletter subscribers come from the bonus scene signups, and then the remaining just come from organic, like website traffic and stuff. So I don't really do builders or anything like that. I just prefer, I'm like, I want the people who really like my books to be there, and that's it. You know.
That's awesome.
Email provider do you use, Ana? Which one?
I use ConvertKit. So I will say they are pricey, especially once you have a big, like very pricey. But I like them because I've been with them from day one. I used to use them in some of my old marketing stuff, and they have very powerful, because I segment my newsletter. Yeah. So they have very kind of powerful tagging and segmentation options. So I just stuck with them.
Yeah,
I'm picking that if you're someone who likes spreadsheets, you also really love playing around with all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I do, and they have this. I don't know if other newsletter providers have this, but they have this thing where they can actually track like where the subscribers are from. So I can be like, okay, like I just want to send this newsletter out to everyone that lives within like 50 miles of New York City, right? So they can do that.
Wow, that's cool. That is really cool.
Yeah. There's quite I imagine there's quite a learning curve to it. But that was a transferable skill, if you like, that you could take over.
Yeah.
Do you have with an 85% of people coming from the bonus scenes, do you have really high open rates and click-through rates? Are they?
I do. It's hold on, let me. I'll just check right now what they are.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I think my open rate is.
She's looking, and out the window we can see their buildings behind her. It's a lovely day where she is.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so it's about a 64% open rate.
Oh,
and about like 4 to 5% click rate.
Wow.
Wowza.
And I'm guessing with a big list, 65%. That's
really impressive.
They go down when they get bigger, right? Like the bigger the list.
But I clean out my list. I clean out my list every month or two. Every 1 to 2 months. Yeah, because I'm not paying. And like I said, ConvertKit is expensive, and I'm not paying for people that want to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's impressive.
I want to talk about the next, moving on to the next one. And actually, I want to talk about what it was like to instantly to get the fame that you got, because I went to RIA. I was signing between you and Nalini Singh. As you can imagine, I was didn't have the lines that you guys had. And I was in awe of you guys just continually smiling, taking photos and being amazing. What was it like to get that sort of level of fame quite quickly, really, for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it been quite a interesting time, you know. And you know, obviously there's a lot of pros. Like this is kind of like the author. I'm like living kind of my personal author dream, right? Like it's really, because I think being an author is such an isolating career. And it's really nice to be able to talk about your books and to connect with other readers, and like having readers say, you know, like this is my comfort book, or that they loved the characters. It makes the hard days a lot easier, right? And obviously, like, I'm very happy I'm no longer at my day job, which is also a bonus. But you know, there was definitely a learning curve for that too, because it's kind of like one minute you're kind of, you know, like writing in your little room, and then all of a sudden it's like,
wow,
you know, like it's a lot of like a lot of eyes on you, and sort of like a lot of the pressure and expectations. Like honestly, the book after Twisted Love, like Twisted Games, was really, really hard for me to write, just because I was like, it was so stressful, because I'm like, oh my God, I was like, what if everyone hates the second book? I was like, what if it doesn't do as well? Like, what if this doesn't meet their expectations? And I feel like maybe that's something that doesn't ever like truly go away. But one of the things I'm trying to do is like, I'm trying to learn out how to, like, my readers' opinions are important to me, but also like learning how to not let all of that noise kind of affect me. And then, you know, also just trying to grow my business, change my business in a way that makes sense, because I think some of the things that make sense when you're just starting out are no longer as effective. And you have to kind of switch your mindset, right? Like when you're a newer author, like when I was a newer author, my thing was like, I'm like, I want everything to be on a budget, right? Because I didn't have that money. I'm like, I will put in the time, I'll do this myself. But I think once you start to grow, you will eventually reach a point where it's actually detrimental for you to not hire some things out. Like you will earn more if you delegate and invest that money than if you try to bootstrap everything, right? And so that's been kind of a change as well. So
do you also think, I sometimes think there's almost like a pride in doing it all yourself? Does that sound weird? Like, do you get what I mean? Like this kind of, I'm doing it myself and I can,
I totally, I totally get what you mean. And I think, I don't know if that's uniquely, like, I'm sure it happens in other countries too, but I feel like in America, there's a very sort of like, you know, pull yourself up from your bootstraps, which is a great thing, you know, like, but also I think sometimes a lot of people are reluctant to ask for help for whatever reasons, you know, whether it's like a money block or they, you know, like a lot of different reasons why not, but
absolutely.
So what was the first, what would you identify as the first part of your business that you got help in? Where did you start?
Well, I hired a PA. I actually hired a PA the week that Twisted Love released. Because I needed someone. I was like, I needed someone to manage the arcs, the arc team, giveaway, just more admin stuff. And then I hired a second PA at the beginning of 2022 before Twisted Hate released. And around that time, before I went full time, I also hired a financial advisor, sort of like financial business advisor, who was really helpful. So I kind of like slowly but steadily kind of built my team around me. But the PA was the very first thing, just to get the basics out of the way, right? I'm like, I don't really need to be troubleshooting tech issues for Kindle, right? Or like closing giveaways.
That's really sensible too, because I think a lot of us do try and do all of it, and it's almost detrimental.
But it's like, sorry, you know how you went, TikTok's your audience and so is Insta, you know, that was great to identify that. I think some of us just chase our tails and go TikTok, Insta, rah, 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 and then writing books and doing it. It's too much.
It's a lot. And that's the thing. Like for me, I always believe that it's faster to grow your business when you hone in on each thing and you slowly build on what you do, right? And I know like FOMO is a thing. I get FOMO, right? Like when I see people killing it on Patreon, when I see people doing Kickstarter, I'm like, wow, that looks awesome. But I can't do all of it at once. And I think the way that I see it is, pick a thing to focus on, get really good at it to the point where it's almost like second nature, right? And then you pick something else that you want to grow. So for me, it's kind of like when you're publishing your first book, everything that you have to do from the editing to uploading to KDP, like all of that is probably really overwhelming. But once you've done that a couple of times or like a couple dozen times, you don't really think about it. It becomes kind of like more automatic, right?
Yeah.
So once you get to that point, then you can be like, okay, now I want to focus on audio, or like I want to focus on TikTok or Instagram. And so for me, I think, and this is an old marketing adage too, I think like sometimes the brands that are the most sustainable are the ones who pick their lane and they stay in it. They don't try to do everything all at once. I remember I was reading this marketing book and they're like, they're like Coca-Cola. It had a couple of main competitors when it was starting out, right, in the 20th century. And then these competitors all tried to branch out and do like all of these different drinks and all of these different products. And then Coke was like, you know what, we're going to do Coke and that's it. And they're like, guess which one is the one that's around today?
Exactly true though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. So can I just ask, and I probably you've already answered the question, plotter or pantser? I would say you're a plotter, right?
Yeah, I am. I used to be a pantser. My If Love series, I just sat down and I was like, whatever happens, happens. But now I am very, very detailed plotter. Well, I'm a mix. So I plot out all of the chapters, but I'm not like scene by scene, right? Like I have like one paragraph summary for each chapter and then I'll go with it. Yeah.
And is your genre dark romance? Have I got that right?
It's dark-ish romance. It's funny. It's funny because I get this question a lot because everyone's like, "Do you write dark romance?" And I'm like, it's kind of like gray. I don't know. It's not like super dark, but it's also not like a fluffy rom-com either, right?
I was going to say, because I read an article and it was like dark romance author, and I was like, I don't know if I would say dark. I'm glad that you say that.
It's the lighter side. It's like the beginners. It's like the gateway to dark.
Yeah, you're the gateway book.
Yeah. There are worse things to be. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned you had a suspense element in there as well. Is that through all your books?
Yeah. So most notably in Twisted is where you get most of the suspense element. Kings of Sin varies. It's a little bit lighter on suspense. There's still that thread, but not as much as Twisted. Yeah.
And
I just can't help myself.
Do you still write your blurbs first, Anna?
I try to. So I kind of sketch them out, right? Like just a couple of lines. It's not the final blurb. But I generally know what the tagline is because that also goes in my back matter. For the pre-order link. Yeah.
I guess it helps to distill down the like what's the main trope, what's the main hook kind of thing.
Universal
That's what you're doing.
Fantasies by Theodora Taylor. That's exactly what she recommends us to do the blurb.
What's the process? How long does it take you to write a book from start to finish? Oh, sorry.
No, it takes me as long as my deadline tells me.
Yeah. It's the truth,
if
right?
it's 2 months, it takes me 2 months. If it's 6 months, it takes me 6 months. I'm just that type of person.
Yeah. No,
I'm always like, I'm gonna be ahead of my writing, but
never happens though, right?
Reach that point. Yeah.
Do you give yourself time off? Like, do you allocate time off? Because you're obviously busy and you're obviously traveling the world, going to a lot of signings and things like that. Do you schedule in time off?
I don't really I wouldn't say I schedule time off. My achiever is really like, no, you must work. I think I do take like a day after a new release, like a day or two where I can just kind of relax and celebrate and just be like, oh, thank God that's done. But then it doesn't take me long before I start getting a little restless again. So I wouldn't say it's time off. It's more like I'm thinking, right? And they always say like for a number one intellection, thinking is working. And so I will probably for 2 weeks. I mean, I can't write for 2 weeks after I finish a book, like actually write. So that's my time that I spend like ideating.
That's cool. So talking about that, like what made you decide to do coaching with Becca, and what have you learned from that? Are there been sort of epiphanies that you can share with us that are not too?
Yeah, so I mean, I took her Write Better Faster course. I've seen her present at quite a few author conferences, and I kind of just like her style, you know. I'm like, oh, you know, like this really resonates with me. And I felt like I was at a point where I really needed to, like I was getting a little frustrated because like my intellection, it was getting me, I was not moving as fast as I wanted. And I felt like I had some blocks, right? Like in my head. And so I was like, you know, like, let me just try this out. And so I ended up doing her monthly coaching, which has been really helpful, just because we can kind of go over different things, right? We spend a lot of time on my intellection. She, like me trying to fight it, and her just being like, you know, like, this is the way that you work and you gotta plan your schedule instead of like trying to fix it. She's like, there's nothing to fix. It's just the way that you are, which I did not like hearing, by the way.
We don't want,
no,
we want answers. We don't want to be told what we are.
I was like, I don't want to be good the way that I am. I don't like the way that I am right now. But yeah, we kind of worked on that and trying to find processes that will work with my strengths instead of against them. And then also like really figuring out, as I'm trying to build a team, that's really a core focus for me now, is trying to build a good team around me that can really be effective and take a lot of the things that I don't need to do off my plate. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the types of personalities, the type of workers, like, you know, the assistants that would work best with me, because not everyone kind of gels in the workplace, right? So that was really helpful in terms of figuring out like, oh, like I need a person with this specific type of work style, right? And yeah, I just honestly, I'm kind of like, you know, Becca is kind of like my author therapist. I just
she's for a lot of people.
It's nice. It's nice to talk to someone who understands the business and able to,
because it's quite a lonely business, right? You know,
it
really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, any connections, even though I'm also a high relator, but it's also nice. It's nice to connect that way.
We spend a lot of time in our own heads, don't we?
We do, especially the number one intellection in my head all the time.
What are your other ones? What are your top 5? So intellection, achiever.
Intellection, achiever, input, futuristic, and empathy are my top 5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of thinking in my top 10.
Yeah.
I've never done it, and I don't plan to, because I would probably just spend all
she
my
would
time
be like a number 1 achiever, and you know, a number 2 doer. I don't. There's not even a thing for doer.
I don't think
but
there's a lot of green in Wendy's top 5. Let's put it that way.
Awesome.
So I love that. I think the empathy one is interesting. I feel like there's because your stories are like that Twisted Love story. I'll get out what I'm trying to ask eventually. So it's a great story, and you just sort of wrote what you wanted to read. Like that was just, it sort of came out of you. I don't know, are there things that you do in your books that make them the connection, you know, or do you think it's just you're an empathy person, you're empathetic, you can create these characters in this romance that just works? Like how do you
you know, that's an interesting question. So that was one of the strengths that we have never really talked about yet. But I always try to create characters that feel a little, I mean, like they're not necessarily realistic, right? Like, is a semi-murderous billionaire with a genius IQ realistic? Not really. But
his character traits maybe though, right?
Yes, but you know, from all of my characters, I try to put in at least something that is relatable. A lot of it is drawn from my real life, right? Like insecurities, or kind of the way that they react to certain situations. And I don't know if this is an empathy thing, but I also, like, for every book, when there is a breakup scene or sort of like a sad scene, if I don't cry during that scene, I rewrite it. So so I'm like, that's like my gauge. I'm like, okay, if I'm not crying while I'm writing it, there's like a problem, you know?
Feel it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
I'm like,
yeah.
Isn't it
so
funny?
I have to like feel it. Yeah.
Do you reread your books?
Oh God, no.
Oh, you
After
don't?
publication, no. Yeah, I never want to, because I know in my head, like when I reread a book, I'll just start nitpicking everything. And then I'll just want to change the whole thing, and I can't. Like, and I'll get in my head about it, right? I'm like, no, I have to focus on the next book. So I just, I'll reread certain parts, but I don't reread the entire book.
Yeah. Fair enough too.
So a question that we often get is to ask guests is, what percentage of time would you say on a average across a year would you spend on writing versus the business side of things? Like, would it be a 50-50 split? Would it be 80 writing, 20 business? What would you ballpark give yourself?
That is, that's an interesting question, because I feel like I condense all of my writing into one short time, no matter how long of a time I have. Because when I have a long deadline, right, like I'm just kind of like, I'll write a paragraph a day, and then the next day I'm kind of like, like I'll take today off, and then it's like the month before release, right, and then I'm like, oh my God, I have to finish this book, and so I'll be like staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning, like writing. So it's hard for me to say, because I really have like 2 or 3 like crash periods of writing where it's like really intense. And then the rest is all like business and marketing, right? Yeah. But I do spend a lot of time on marketing stuff and business stuff. Yeah. So that's, I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We've had, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Sky Warren does it that way as well. She has a period of like writing production, that's all she does, and then there's a release month, and then a marketing month kind of thing, and then a writing month. Like, it works.
Everyone's very different, aren't they?
Everybody's very different. Whatever works best for you. Has it changed since you've been, like, you're in year 3, shall we say, of your stellar success at this point? Has it changed, or is it still evolving for you, or are you just kind of, this is your groove?
I'm still evolving. I'm still trying to refine my writing process. I feel like it kind of changes a little bit every time I release a book, whether it's, the way that I work with my editor and alpha readers, or how I balance the marketing and writing, right? So I'm always open to tweaking things. I feel like we've gotten to a point where I've kind of accepted the type of writer I am and how I work with deadlines. But I do still strive to be more efficient, because it's very stressful, right? Like that kind of crash and burn cycle. My adrenaline really, it really kicks into gear in that last month. And so, so I'm still trying to figure out a way where I can be ahead in my writing schedule. I have not gotten there yet. But and I'm also, like I said, I'm still growing my team. So I have gradually started to let go of some of the business things that I used to do myself and delegate those out. So we'll see.
It's kind of
well,
relieving.
You're doing something right.
But it's kind of relieving to hear you say that, though, that you're not, you're not perfect, and you don't do everything amazingly, brilliantly well every time.
I really don't.
It's all hope. It gives us all hope.
It does. That's awesome. So I think we might be coming towards the end of it.
Quickly talk about your journey as a hybrid, just quickly, the background of that, if you could. Because I think there'll be a lot of authors that will be wondering, how do I get books in the bookstores?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
As well as, so
So I was at Ingram Spark from the start. So I had Twisted Love up on Ingram Spark before it even came out. And if you don't know, there's basically two main ways, right, that indie authors can have their paperbacks printed. One is through KDP. The other is through Ingram Spark. If you want to get your book into bookstores, you have to be on Ingram, because bookstores don't like to buy from Amazon. That's their competitor. And so you list it up there, and they can, like, it's usually listed on their website. And then to get into stores, I mean, I will say, like, I don't know, I wouldn't say like my journey is normal, but it was at the point where a lot of the indie books that you see in bookstores now are kind of the book talk books, right? Like not all of them, like I'm starting to see kind of a wider range depending on who the local stores are and what the buyers want. But for the most part, they're book talk books. And so I think that's where a lot of people source what they want to buy. So for me, it was honestly, I just put it up on Ingram. And then I think in the summer, I want to say the fall of 2021 was when Barnes & Noble really started picking up paperbacks to be in their stores. And honestly, I did really well with that. I actually put my discount like way lower than they had kind of suggested you do. So they're like 55% discount, make it returnable, right? And I was like, no returns because I do not want to take on that liability. And then I think I put my discount at like 40%, just because it was so, when you look at the margins of the profit that you get, right? Like 55%, you're earning basically nothing, like unless you really hike up the price of your paperback. So I was like, and then when I put it up at the time, I was like, well, like no one's going to buy my books and put them in stores anyway. So it doesn't really matter. Right. But I think at that point, it had gotten enough traction on TikTok that they were buying the paperbacks anyway. And then I had, and then I think it was at the end of fall 2021 fall 2021 that I had my UK publisher reach out with interest. And then like early 2022 was when the US publisher made an offer. And so for me, it was kind of two separate decisions. For the UK publisher, they have my full rights. So it's not just print. They have my digital rights in the UK and Commonwealth too. And for me, that was kind of an easier decision because like the UK, Australia, I guess they're bigger markets, but they're not big markets. You know what I mean? Like US is still the bulk. So I was like, well, if a publisher wants to take the bulks and they want to market and do all of these things and expand the world reach, totally fine. US and Canada was a lot harder for me because I earned so much from it, right? Even in paperbacks, like I was earning a lot in paperbacks, and I was like, I don't think they are able to give me an advance that is able to match what I make as an indie, right? Because my agent and I ran the numbers. We're like, okay, this is how many more times they would have to sell in print for you to make what you are making now. And so to be completely honest, I said no the first time. And then they kind of came back with like a new offer, and we kind of discussed it. And this was before they really started taking off, before paperback rights were as like popular as they are now. So I was really hesitant. I was like, I want to make sure that if they get the rights, that they're also marketing it. Like I don't want them to acquire my books and then they sit there, right? So there's a lot of these things, and we kind of went back and forth, but I did end up signing with them. So I'm with Bloom, which is an imprint of Source Books in the US. And then in the UK, I am with Piatkis, which is an imprint of Hachette.
Can I just ask a silly question? So you said that you're with ebooks as well in the UK. Is it against are you still in a KU for your ebooks in the US?
So it's different. So it's really complicated. It was very complicated for me too. So I am still in KU in the US and Canada because they only have my print rights in North America. And then my UK publisher has my full rights. And so they have this thing, it's wide. My ebook is wide in the UK and Commonwealth. But I don't usually get dinged for it because in the back end, I'll uncheck, right? Like there's like the back end in KDP where I'll ask you if you have worldwide rights, and I just uncheck all of the UK territories. It's usually not an issue. Sometimes I will get the occasional, like, your book was found, your Kindle Unlimited title was found in this thing. And then I'm like, oh my God. And then I have to like email, and I usually just send them the contract I have with my publisher, and it's usually okay. But it's kind of a pain logistically, honestly.
Can be tough, right?
It's and then there were a lot of links. Like the transition was a little bit tough for my readers because they didn't really know. It was kind of like a new thing, right? They weren't as used to it as they were now. They're like, what is going on? Like, why is it no longer in KU in Australia? Like, why are the books different? Why are they smaller? It was like this whole thing. But I think we're starting to iron that out. And honestly, I've been happy with it. I think with both of my publishers. They are able, obviously, like as an indie, right? Like you're not, like even if they pick up Book Talk books, the distribution channels just aren't the way that you're able to do it with a traditional publisher.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you think it's worthwhile to do that if you can, if someone gets approached?
Yeah. So for me, I have had a good experience, and I really like my teams on both of the publishers. I will say, right, so for the US, I will never ever give up the digital rights to my best-selling series in the US, right? Print, yes. Digital, no. So I'm glad that they had that model where it's like paperback only.
Yeah.
Do you have audio as well?
I do. So I sold the rights to my Twisted series and If Love series to Tantor, because at the time, I think I sold it in like summer of 2021. And I just didn't have the time to deal with audio, right? Like going back to what I said earlier, like I was just trying to, like I still had a day job. I was trying to like get all these things together. But then for my Kings of Sin series and then going forward, all of my audios are indie published. So I work with a production company that kind of helps with the back end. But when I saw my audio royalties from Tantor, like how much I earned compared to how much they earned, I was like, no.
No.
I mean, no, they're great. You know, like I didn't have an issue working with them, but I'm like, I can make so much more money with indie publishing audio.
But that's a learning curve, right? You know, all of these things you learn as you go, don't you? You know? Some work out, some don't. That's exactly right. Awesome. Well, you've been told us so much. Wow, it's been an amazing interview.
So is there any last things that you want to any advice that you would give to someone starting out as an indie author in this industry now, that to help them get through and keep going, I guess?
I mean, like I said earlier, like I would just kind of pick one or two things to focus on when you're starting out marketing wise, right? Like really hone in on it, and kind of not, I think this is something that like people say a lot, but it's really true, is like, don't look at someone's, like, don't compare like your chapter 1 to someone's like chapter 20, right? Like where they are, and trying to compare your careers. And also, like, don't feel like your first book has to be a hit right out of the gate. I mean, I think if there's one thing that we've seen over the years is that like any book of any age can really take off. Like we've seen debuts like smash it out of the park. We've seen books that are 10 years old like go viral. So just like, you never know which is going to be the one that hits. So
that's great.
Kind of keep going.
Keep going. That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. We've really enjoyed having you here. I know I haven't. I can see it on the faces of the other two.
It's been awesome.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So where can you be found if someone wants to go and look for your books or find you? Where do they go?
So all of the information is on my website, www.anahuang.com. You can find all of the links there. I'm also social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. I'm at author Ana Huang, ANAHUANG. So
awesome. Thank you so much. And Shah, where can we be found?
We can be found at spargirlspodcast.com. We're on Patreon if you'd like to support the show. And we just want to say thank you so much, Anna. That was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
And
of course.
Inspiring. And congratulations on all your success and all your hard work, because none of that comes by accident.
No.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful.
No worries. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We've enjoyed having you here with us. We'll be back again next week, but for now, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.